Rose, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Lindsay. Councilmember Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Councilmember Plinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Here.
Councilmember Boger.
Here. Thank you. Are there any members of the public this evening that would like to comment to council? Okay, seeing none, won't be your last opportunity. Going into our presentations, first order of business from the Finance Department, our Emergency Utility Assistance Program. Jennifer.
Good evening, everyone. I think I'm going to have to lean forward here. I wanted to provide an update on the Emergency Utility Assistance Program that we've been putting together and let you know what the next steps are going to be. So tonight we're going to talk about the purpose of the program, who or how eligibility would be determined, what the options are for funding, how much assistance and how often would it be provided, and how would we administer the program. If you'll remember our discussions during the budget cycle, we were hoping to partner with Clark PUD or the City of Vancouver to operate this for us. But unfortunately, the PUD determined that it wouldn't work well for them to partner with us. They'll certainly send people our way if they know that they're eligible currently, but they didn't want to administer it because it wasn't fitting with our LIHEAP schedule. So we went forward with the option of finance handling that, so that's what we'll talk about tonight. The purpose of the program is to provide emergency assistance to customers who have demonstrated a need and are in danger of having their water service shut off or it's already shut off because of non-payment. And then it also allows for other people in the community to help folks by donating, similar to the Operation Warm Heart at Clark PUD. The purpose of the program, again, is for emergency hardship assistance. It's not intended to be a long-term solution or ongoing assistance. This would be for one-time, once-a-year type options, not necessarily a lower rate or any of those types of things. The current options that we have for folks that are in need and are having trouble with their utility bills, we work with the payment arrangements to where we can actually stagger it out for them and have them make payments. We encourage them to make monthly payments. We do all those types of things. We also have an informational brochure at the front counter that we can give to people that are service providers in the area that can assist as well. This program gives us an additional tool to help those folks, so it'll be very beneficial. Some of the key policy issues that we're bringing forward are who determines eligibility, what criteria will be used, how we're funding the program, that'll be an update, and then what's the amount and frequency of the assistance provided. The Finance Department would verify the eligibility according to established criteria. Basically what we did is we are mirroring the Clark PUD and the City of Vancouver program, so we didn't generate anything new. We're not going off of uncharted waters. We're going with what's proven and what's known so that we can be consistent with the rest of the providers in the area. Kind of what I already said here. The criteria that we're using is already being used by other utility assistance programs. Other organizations offering the payment assistance gave us this information to bring forward. We already have the forms already, pending approval, obviously. So we're ready to go, and it's all based on the LIHEAP program, the low income energy assistance program, which is highly used at Clark PUD during the for their utility customers. LIHEAP is a federally funded program. It's 30 years old, and in Washington, the State Department of Commerce establishes the criteria. So we just borrowed their criteria for what we're going to utilize. And basically, it's a combined monthly income of all the members of the household. It's 125% of the federal poverty level, and then that's directly related to the number of people in the household of the service address. Obviously, the documents that we'll collect from them, we'll just have to go by what they're giving us. We're not going to go out and independently audit every person, but we'll definitely collect the required paperwork, and they'll have to attest to the validity of it.
What is what is 125% of federal, what number?
Next slide.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's very, very small up on the screen, but in the handouts, it might be a little easier to read. Those are the income limits that we'll go by. So one member household would have to make less than, it looks like, $1,164 a month. Two income would be 1,576, and so on and so forth. We won't read them all, but
Okay, yeah.
so that's what we're going to go with, since that's what the rest of the utilities in the area base theirs on. You'll remember back to our 2013 budget, we authorized a transfer of $95,000 from the water sewer penalty fund, or penalty line item, to provide assistance to get this kick-started and be available now versus waiting for donations to come in. But in the future, we're hoping that other citizens that want to help those in need will bring forward donations, again, similar to Operation Warm Heart. And we're going to work with, obviously, IT for the website. Once this is up and running and approved, we'll have a flyer, all the forms available online. We'll put a blurb in the bill, so we'll promote it that way. The donations will be accepted with the form at City Hall, or they can mail them in. The donation form is actually two-part, so it'll have the part that they'll mail back to us, but then it'll also have the tax information for their charitable donation records.
This is qualifies as a 501c3 or?
Look at the form.
Donation to public agency.
To a public agency,
It's deductible usually.
correct, because it's for low-income folks. I think, I don't know what the exact qualification is, but I know that that is an allowable deduction.
I'll find it.
Again, we followed the City of Vancouver as a guideline for this, for the amount and frequency. The emergency assistance, we actually were a little more generous than City of Vancouver. They only allow once per every 24 months, and we went from once every 12 months just to help those that may need it, with a maximum credit of $250 for the delinquent bill for the service address. And then obviously, of course, we wouldn't charge the late fees and penalties and all that if they've accrued, because that wouldn't be beneficial to the person needing the assistance. We would administer it through the finance department. What we plan on doing is putting together a list of folks that are eligible based on who's applied, who's on the shut-off list, who is already shut off, and then provide that information the Monday before shut-offs to the finance committee, to let them say, yes, these people deserve, or not deserve, but are qualified and meet the criteria. Up front, there's going to be plenty of money in the account to most likely take care of everybody, but in the future, if there's not, that's why we're putting that process in place, so that the finance committee would determine who would get the assistance, and if there's not enough funding, who wouldn't. I'm assuming, off the bat that we'll be okay, but just to have that formality in place so that the finance committee can be involved in determining that. And again, we'll bring all the information to them of what requirements they meet, when they applied, what their history is, and that sort of information.
Jen, can I ask a quick question?
Uh-huh.
On that? Is it common for a finance committee to be in charge of determining who's eligible and who gets the money first and who's denied and so on and so forth?
I was just utilizing the current finance committee in place, since it's a finance function, was our thought behind that. But we can change that if you'd like.
I'm just curious to know if other cities are doing it this way, or
I think
how did we?
the PUD has a whole department that manages it, so I don't think it goes to their board. It probably goes in lump sums, but since we're a smaller operation and we're doing it in-house, we wanted to distance it from the staff, so that it wasn't necessarily the line staff that was making the determination, that it was, brought to a committee and the committee chose. We could change who that goes to if you prefer.
I just question whether or not it's appropriate for elected officials to be doing that, deciding which
Probably.
citizens get the money and which citizens don't.
It's probably as appropriate, if not more appropriate, than staff.
This PUD is using a whole department.
They have a department, and they
It's not
also
an
have
elected
an
official,
outside
it's
agency, I think, that assists with that portion as well.
What does Vancouver do?
They utilize the PUD currently, but the PUD didn't want to extend that. I don't think it's lining up well with the PUD, but they're already, from what we heard from the PUD and from the city, it's not working as well as they had hoped, so they didn't want to pick up another client.
It's worth asking MRSC.
Sure, do that.
It's a good thought.
Do we have any idea how many people this is going to affect? Or the,
I think shut-off day was actually today, and I'm not sure how many folks we actually shut off. Typically, it ranges recently to about 35-ish, because we've been calling the day before to let folks know that they're on the list and either arranging a payment arrangement or just reminding them, because sometimes they just forget or didn't get the bill, that type of thing. So it could assist several of those people on the list, but we have been working really hard to be flexible and staggered out for folks, but again, not wanting to get them further in the hole as the next bill comes due.
that's 35 a month roughly.
Correct. Because we do different side of town every month.
Are those, most of those 35 because they're low income, or is it just they were?
I'm not sure, because we haven't been collecting that. We have flagged a couple accounts that we know would qualify for the one-time, but again, it is for one-time assistance. It's not an ongoing solution. So with those folks that have expressed a need for longer-term solutions, we do direct them to the Treasure House and some of those other places. As we learn of new ones, we add them to the list. And then once approved, we'd notify the individuals that were authorized and had their bill paid so that they would know and not have to wonder. So again, in summary, the purpose is to provide for emergency assistance. We're using consistent criteria with the rest of the county for determining eligibility. It'd be a maximum of $250 per household every 12 months, initially seeded through the $95,000 transfer that was authorized in the budget, hoping for ongoing funding by donations. And then we can revisit the program. We were thinking 2015, just to give it a year, since we're about halfway through 13, have it roll through 14. At budget time, we'll probably have to talk about it a little bit to see what the balance is at, but then revisit it and see if we want to change anything in 15. The next step will be next meeting. I will bring forward a resolution with all the policy criteria behind it, and I'll forward information on the question first between now and next week. That way you'll have that prior to the meeting. And then we're hoping that by having it at the August 12th meeting, that's prior to the shut-off, so we'll be able to utilize it that month for the folks that are eligible.
Jennifer?
One more question. Can you, or have you already checked with the auditor's office to find out if we are setting this up correctly and if there are any special audit requirements for?
That's why we're basing it off the LIHEAP criteria, is because those are all audited programs that are approved and ready to go. So yes, we have been working with them to make sure that we're setting it up appropriately and making
Right.
sure that we have everything in line.
Right, and they don't actually do these checks through the utility company already? The checks into their income and so forth?
Some will, and with those we'll get information from the PUD. Which is similar to what they already do with Vancouver. So what the PUD has told us that they will do is if they have somebody in their system that's looking for assistance, they will send them with a form to us saying that they're already authorized. But my guess is that it'll start here to begin with, so because we usually have first contact with people.
Is there any funding source from the city, or after this initial $95,000 is used up, it will be totally donations?
That's the hope, correct. If that doesn't turn out to be self-sustaining, then that's why we were thinking we can revisit it at 2015 to see how that's going and how a full year has done.
Will this be a separate fund so that once we see quarterly reports,
Yes,
we'll know the fund balance?
correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Have we had any citizens contact us about this, as far as donators?
Not Not yet, but we haven't marketed it
Right.
yet, so we'll do, again, we'll put it on the website, we'll put a blurb in the bill. We'll make sure that it's posted at City Hall. We have some new stand-up plastic thingies, for a very formal technical term, that we've been sliding information in so that folks can see when they come up to the counter and know what's our options to help others. We have had citizens waiting in line in the past, hearing the conversation, because it's not very private, that have paid for the folks in front of us that had anonymous donors that way. So I'm sure that there are folks in the area that will assist.
There wasn't anything in the last bill about it?
I don't think so.
No. How would somebody who's already signed up on like direct, like I kind of glance at my bill and
Right.
I don't
We'll have to think about that and see.
know, like it just kind of,
Hmm.
I don't really.
You don't read your bill?
No, I do. I do. Now.
Just
But
go
I
straight to the bottom line.
Exactly.
I just, you know what I mean?
Yes.
If I, wanted
There are
to
lots
donate
of people
$10,
that-
I would have to,
Do something different.
do something different
Right.
than I'm automatically doing.
We could probably look into a mass mailing or something like that with the utility customers to let folks know about the program, and maybe send out the forms so that they have a copy, and if they'd like to donate, look into the cost of
So
doing
if you
that.
wanted to do this ongoing, do we have the wherewithal to take the total of my bill and add another 10? Have another
When you
line item?
when you mail it in, yes, with bill pay, I'd
Bill
have to
pay's
look
fine.
at C, because that's what a lot of people do, but I know that with Clark PUD you can. So we would just have to look into making sure that that's truly what they wanted it to go toward, and not like $20 extra toward their bill or something.
Sure.
But we're gonna start off at one point and
Mhm.
hope to expand it and make it easier and easier for folks to help others.
Thank you for putting this
questions?
together.
Jen, we've got this set up for $250 maximum per year. Can people use it 2 or 3 times
We limited it.
until they get to
Oh.
that point? So if I only need $50 assistance this month to keep from getting it shut off, is it one time
Yeah.
or is it up to
Well, we had
$250 per household?
meant for it to be one time, because a standard 2-month bill is right at the 200 mark, but we didn't want to make it too small in case there was additional charges on there for water usage. But I can look at the wording, if that's your desire to have it be multiple up to that amount a year, we could do that.
Say they're $50 short this month, they're not the
Right.
whole bill short.
But again, it was meant to be emergency one time versus
Does that-
ongoing.
Does that create an additional tracking problem?
We would just have to put more documentation with the next one to show it's all about leaving a good audit trail. So as long as we're keeping that documentation with what we're doing, then we'll be fine. We're tracking individual payment arrangements that way. Each one of those is tracked separately as well. So it'll just add into that batch.
Decision, whether it's just in a short-term
Why don't you
fix or.
maybe chat with your staff about that, and see if that is something that they think would be useful if folks only needed some dollars to get through, or if it's
Okay.
200 or something short of the 250, and then maybe for time's sake, bring it back to your finance council between
Okay.
now and the meeting on the 12th.
Excuse me. Sorry. I will do so.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll let you touch the iPad so that I don't.
Okay, moving to Public Works, our pavement analysis. Mr. Dunn, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine, thank you, Your Honor. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So tonight, we're going to have a presentation on our pavement management
Joel, come on up.
program. Yeah, come on up, Joel. Sorry, I was going to introduce Joel here. And as you know, our street system is probably the largest asset we have in the city. Very important to make sure that we maintain it correctly and do a good job on our pavement management. So we have Joel tonight. He's going to present this pavement management program, and I'm going to just read to you a little bit of his experience. We're happy to have him help us out with this pavement management Mr. Condor has over 35 years' experience in public transportation field. Much of it is specializing implementing pavement management systems for local agencies. Previously, he has served as supervisor of Marion County Public Works, Engineering Information Services Section in Salem, Oregon. Since 1999, Mr. Condor has worked in the private sector, continuing to promote pavement management concepts. He has been teaching classes in pavement management for more than 20 years and was voted the Pavement Manager of the Year in 2001 by the Northwest Pavement Management Association. And so with that, I will turn the presentation over to Joel.
It's kind of weird hearing all that about me. I feel like I'm Superman or something.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It was quite a experience working with the city of Washougal. I got to go up and down every single street in your city and count every crack and every patch and every hole. So I got to see your city from the whole city. And I don't know how many people here on the council have been up and down every single street
None.
in your city.
I would think.
What Joel hasn't said is that he started in 2009. did he?
Yeah.
It took me a couple years to get through it. So actually, I did the city of Camas right before I did you folks. So I ran into all your streets and I kept going, oh, this is a Washougal street. And then a few weeks later, I ended up here. So
You should see if you could moonlight for Google Maps or
Yeah.
something, you know, put that little camera on your hood and take off.
it's kind of funny you say that. I do.
Oh!
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's very good insight there. Actually, we have two prongs to our business. We have a digital imaging division as well, and we have video vans that go around in Video Road. And since Google, we're already up here, Google hires subcontractors to do it.
Nice.
In fact, I will be at Google tomorrow, in fact,
Nice.
in Mountain View, California. So,
I wondered who did
I
that.
have a nephew that works there.
uh,
Say hi for me.
really? Does he go to work at 10 and get off at 1 like all the rest of them?
I have no idea.
It's an amazing place. Anyway, so yeah, with that, I'll go ahead and get started. Pavement management, kind of wanted to start with that very first slide if we want to move up to it and talk about what a pavement management system is. And it's basically kind of a computerized system. It's a database that we built. So what I did is I went up and down every one of your roads and measured them and got the length, got the width, got the beginning location, the ending location, and all that kind of stuff. So then we had a good inventory. Once I did that, then I started doing the pavement inspections. And by doing that and getting all that information in there, then we can start doing a lot of analysis on your roads and looking at life cycle cost of your pavements, how long they were going to last, what your guys' financial responsibilities would be 5 and 10 years out. So it's a pretty powerful tool once you get all the information in there. It really shows you when you have a pavement management system if these guys over here in the Public Works Department are doing the right things, because we can kind of do some projections based upon the condition of your roads looking into the future. We can look at the decisions they're making now, if they're doing the right, if they're crack sealing, slurry sealing, overlaying, whatever they're doing, we can look and see the effect of that, if it's a cost-effective treatment or not. We're going to hear a little bit about that acronym PCI, the Pavement Condition Index, and I'll use that a little bit in the next 10 minutes here, and that's basically a number that every one of your streets was assigned between 0 and 100. So, and that's something that you can look up. Any street you want to look up in your system now, you have a rating number, a PCI number between 0 and 100. We used a program called Street Saver. It's produced by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission down in Oakland, California, and it's the predominant software on the West Coast. About 80% of the agencies in Oregon are using it, about 50% of the agencies in Washington that are using a system are using it, and about 95% of the agencies in California. So you pick the software that's the most common on the West Coast, and there's lots of opportunities for training and so forth with it. So,
Can I ask what a 100 pavement condition index street would look like?
yes, I just came across one out here on the highway as I came in. You know, that they just got done paving it out there. It's all nice and black
Okay,
and shiny.
brand new.
That's 100.
That'll be 100. What about a 0 or a 1 or a 10 or something?
I can't think of a road. Basically,
Just
it's
like
a road.
a dirt trail
It's
or
close to dirt.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can have a 0 if it's completely alligator cracked from shoulder to shoulder, the entire pavement, and it's popping and coming apart, that would be a 0.
Okay.
I have rated roads before. I just rated one here a couple weeks ago. It's the most bizarre road I've ever seen. I went down it, and the only thing that was left was a piece of pavement down the middle about that wide, and that's where the yellow stripe was. Other than that, it was gravel on both sides.
Paint held it
I've never
together.
seen anything like it before.
Was it in Washougal?
No, actually, it was in Tillamook County, Oregon, so. But they've just beat it up so bad with the dairy trucks and stuff, they just left the center line. Nobody ever drives on it, so. But that was a 0
It's
because.
basically an abandoned road.
Nope,
No?
not at all, nope. They use it, it's just dairy farmers use it, it's a farm-to-market road, so.
Okay.
But yeah, it's pretty much back to gravel as a 0, and I'm sure some of us have been on roads, or gravel roads are actually better than paved roads, so. That's what a 0 is. I don't think you guys had any 0s. Really, the city of Washougal has a current PCI, and this is a network-wide PCI of 80. So that's your score, putting all your streets together. Good score. It's a very good score. I don't get to sit very often and talk to councils about this. I was just at City of Lake Oswego last week doing this same exact thing, and that's a city that has a whole bunch of money. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Lake Oswego, but I don't know if there's a house under $1 million in that city. But, and they have very high standards, but yet their network PCI was 67 and falling fast. So you guys are in pretty good shape.
Well, they're driving those Hummers, they don't really quite need this.
Yeah, the Jaguars and BMWs everywhere. I would think they'd want better streets, but they don't. And so, you know, you guys are an 80. That's a great score. It's one of the best. It's not very often. You know, I probably worked with 100+ agencies, and maybe I could count the cities in the Northwest that have a PCI of 80 or higher on 2 hands. So,
No, you don't.
Camas have.
Sorry.
what's that?
Sorry. What did Camas have?
It's on here. I think it's in the 70s. That's coming up on one of the slides here pretty soon. Yeah, you beat them at that. You definitely beat them at that.
Hey, I drive a school bus for Camas. I can
Now,
attest
as
to the
part of
holes
your-
in their road.
Okay.
As part of your rating here, you basically look at the street as it was designed. You don't look at, you know, what it should, if it's like a substandard street is designed or built, you don't look at, like a street without sidewalks or too narrow or things like, you just look at the condition of the street as it was originally built.
Correct. When I'm looking, I'm doing a surface analysis on it. I'm not trying to guess what should have been, could have been, what's underneath it or anything else. It's just a surface analysis. So the optimum network PCI with a pavement management system is to try to keep your network in the low to mid 80s. So you guys are pretty close. So you don't have a big hole to dig out of like a lot of agencies do. If you don't maintain it the way it is right now, then you will have that big hole to dig out of, and then it's going to become very expensive to try to get back up there. So you guys are at a great starting point. So that's a great thing. You know, as it deteriorates, as pavement deteriorates, you asked the question about what 100 was. Well, you don't have 100, and I looked at that pavement out there today as I was driving in. I said, well, this is 100, but within a few short months, it's going to be into the mid 90s, and by this time we're sitting here next year, it's going to be in the low 90s. So it does deteriorate fast originally. So you've got, it's going to drop quick. Any of your new roads are going to drop quick, and you've got to start thinking about maintenance within usually 2 to 3 years after you put a new pavement down. Most people think, oh, it's a new pavement, we'll think about it in 10, 15 years doing something. No, you got to start thinking about maintenance and when a pavement gets 2 to 3 years old in life. So especially here in the Northwest, because we've just got so many, you know, water is the #1 enemy of pavement. So, and sun's #2, but usually we don't have to worry about that up here that much. So.
Temporarily.
Yeah, just for the next few months. One of the things that I get asked a lot is when I go in, like somebody asked when, you know, what was Camas, is we always want to know what our neighbor's PCI is. Well, what are you guys comfortable with it having? You guys have a PCI of 80 right now, so you really got to look at your taxpayers here and see what they're comfortable having as a PCI. Sometimes there's been, they've done polls and they've sent out and asked the people what they thought of our streets. Have you guys ever done that? Any chance, do you know? Ever ask your voters what you think of our streets? And
Came up a little bit in the strategic plan. You know,
Yeah.
we asked them general questions and
More citizen
feedback.
initiated than us
Yeah,
asking
right.
direct questions.
usually the phone ringing in Public Works is usually the first sign that they're not happy with the streets, the condition they are. So
It rings.
it rings. So but that's one of the things you really need to ask yourself, because in some places they accept pavements in a lower condition, like I just mentioned about Tillamook over there. And I don't know how you've ever been to Tillamook. You know, almost half of their roads are below sea level. So there's a couple roads when I rate, I have to read the tide table before I go up them, because I know the street will be underwater when I come back down. And you can imagine trying to maintain a street that's underwater half of its life. So, but over there, they accept their pavement condition. It's 46, and which is a terrible, terrible network. It's the worst I've ever done in all my years of doing this. But you know what? The folks over there and the taxpayers over there will accept that. They said, that's fine. We're okay with that. So that's one of the questions you have to ask here at Washougal is what are your taxpayers happy with? What pavement condition? Right now it's at 80. It's very good. So
That doesn't include state highways, that's just the county roads.
just the city roads.
City, I'll tell them, the city will tell them.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about here. Yes, that is the county.
Okay.
Yeah, the county roads over there. So
Non-state highways.
no, not the state highways over there.
So
Not at all.
they're obviously using those, I think, to get around.
Pretty much. There's only 3 of them in that whole county, but yeah, Highway 6, Highway 101, and there's another one somewhere. But anyway, but here in Washougal, you guys are in great shape, and so the idea is to keep you there, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Public Works Department contacted me, is to find out exactly where are we. I take the guesswork out of it, and that's what I'm here to do, is help take the guesswork out of it and see where you're at. We also want to talk about how can our best maintenance practices be applied to help achieve this optimum PCI. So what we can do with a pavement management system is we can actually take the budget that you've given them. They can divvy that up and say, we're going to do this many seal coats, this many overlays, we're going to crack seal, we're going to do these kind of things. We can run these scenarios through and see what kind of long-range impact they have. And we can see, okay, we gained a little ground by doing this, we're losing ground or whatever, and we're going to see here in a few minutes on the slide just exactly what the effects of your current budget are. Yes, excuse me. Next slide here. One thing about pavement management, we want to definitely be proactive in doing maintenance. There's a lot of clients I work with that have gotten into a reactive or a crisis type management, the way they pave their roads and fix their roads. One of the reports that comes out of the program is called Sections Selected for Treatment. Then we take your budget, how much money you have, and then the program goes through a lot of analysis. There's a lot of algorithms, and it comes up with a cost-effective number for fixing your streets, and then it prioritizes them and ranks them. And the first thing that most folks at a city council will always ask me is, why is my street not being fixed? You know, this street here is the worst street in the city. Why is it not number 1 on your list? Well, that's crisis management, that's reactive management. That's typically not how pavement management works. Pavement management wants to take streets that are in pretty good shape and keep them there. And if there's any money left over, then we'll address the streets that are really bad. Because you can spend your whole budget fixing 2 blocks of a street, where you could took that same amount of money, you could go out and pave, maintain a mile or a mile and a half of streets. So that's the way pavement management thinks. Currently, Washington counties are mandated to keep an up-to-date pavement management system, and they must do that every 3 years. The cities in Washington are not. A lot of states, the cities are mandated to do this. Like I said, Washington, they're not. Oregon, they're not. But the counties in Washington are. So, and there's a reason for that, and they just want to make sure you're a good steward of your money that you have. You're managing your payments, you're looking at them, and you're charting them, and you're actually doing the right thing. You're spending your money cost effectively. Currently, there are 21 cities using StreetSaver, the pavement management system I'm talking about, the particular software program within a 25-mile radius here. So we have lots of company here. Camas and Camas was the first one to use it here in the county. They just were just a few weeks ahead of you, and Ridgefield has just come online here within the last week or 2. The average annual budget for cities with centerline miles equal to Washougal is $400,000. That's how much money cities, the average amount of money cities your size are spending on street maintenance annually.
Joel, can you define centerline mileage?
Centerline miles is your actual miles of pavement.
Okay.
There's lane miles, which is a mile. If it's a 2-lane road, it'd be counted twice. If it's a 3-lane road, it'd be counted 3 times. But just centerline miles, if you just drove up and down every one of your streets and measured it, that's what your centerline mile, that's what a centerline mile is.
So I think on our website, it's lane miles, which is a little over double.
It should be a little bit, but it's usually about 110% of centerline miles. Right. And so 400,000 is kind of, I wanted to throw that number in for you guys to kind of understand what other agencies your size are using for a budget. And I think yours is currently, is it 150?
It's
I think
150,
currently.
yes.
So, yeah. So you guys can see you're severely underfunded. And when I heard that, I'm like, how did they have such a good PCI, but yet they're underfunded? Something doesn't match here. So as I dug into this and I got running up and down your streets, I understood why. And most of it is because you have a lot of new streets here in town. And your street department's been pretty good about being seal coating your streets. And if you're seal coating your streets, it's, you know, basically just like the siding on your house. If, you know, that stuff will last a long time if you maintain it, you paint it, and you protect it from the weather. And that's basically what they've been doing. So that was a great move.
So Joel, from these last two figures that you've given us, there are 76 cities that are comparable to ours as far as the number of miles of road.
76 cities?
No, that's the
No.
PCI, the average PCI
That's their
of cities
PCI.
that are our same size.
Ours is
Gotcha.
We're at 80.
80.
Yeah, the average PCI of cities with center line miles equal or close to you equals 76. So that basically shows that a lot of cities your size are carrying a PCI in the mid-70s. Some a little higher, some a little lower. But
So on your number just before that, the average annual budget, do you know how many cities are in that are close to what we have in mileage?
about 15 cities I used for that comparison
Okay.
that are within probably a 75, 80 mile radius of you. This is our pavement deterioration curve, and it basically shows the life of pavement. If you look along the bottom there, you'll see 0 is the first year it's paved, and then, you know, of course, you go up there, and the PCI on the left is 100. So the PCI is 100 in the first year that it's paved, and you can see out there as it gets out to about year 15 in life, it's fallen down to about a 50. So you can see kind of the life cycle of pavement. I call this the pay me now or pay me later graph is what I call this, because if you, up there on the top, if you keep doing maintenance and keep applying seal coats and so forth like that, you extend the life of pavement. It's got about a 20 to 25 year life design, pavement does, but if you do it right, you maintain it, and you do preventive maintenance to it, you can get some, most times you can get 45 years of life out of a single paving job on a local street. So if you do it right. So you can see in those first 10 to 15 years of its life, if you're spending $1 on the preservation, it saves you a whole lot of money, where if you wait till it cycles down, you're going to be spending 6 to 10 times that much in trying to maintain the pavement. So it's very important to do your preventive maintenance up front. And that's why we stay away from that street. So why are we not paving the worst street first? And this is the reason why. We ran quite a few scenarios through the pavement management system. I worked with Rob quite a bit on this, and finding out what your budget was. It's $150,000. That's the second line, the second column you see there. The $350,000 I think was kind of the wish list. That was scenario 3, and scenario 4 was the $500,000 a year scenario. I skipped over the first one because the first one is called needs. That's your needs scenario. That's what the program is saying this city needs to do. I also call that kind of the blank check. If the city of Washougal had all the money in the world and they said, street department, what do you need? What do you need to bring our system into the most optimum condition? That is how much money you would need to spend, is $712,000. And you can see this is a 5-year scenario. So if you look at the second line down, that's out over 5 years. You need to spend $3.5 million. Currently, you're spending $750,000 over a 5-year period. The current PCI is 80. You can see that, and the roads in the fourth line down is current percentage in good condition. And about 85% of your roads right now are in good condition, which is very good. Your PCI after 5 years. Based on that needs, you can see the needs raises it up a few points and takes it up to 85. That's the optimum condition. Scenario 2 is where you're currently at. So you have an 80 PCI right now, but you will be at a 76 5 years from now if you keep spending it the way you're going. So you're on a downhill pattern the way you are right now with your budget. If you could pull $350,000 annually in for the streets, you would maintain your PCI. It doesn't move at all 5 years from now. And if you spend $500,000 a year, you can see you're going to go up to 82. So you're getting closer to that optimum number. The most important number, oh, I'm sorry.
Just a question. When you talk about optimization, you're always taking typically a single number, some kind of score, and trying to maximize that or minimize it. That's kind of what optimization
Sure.
means. So what is it we're optimizing?
You're trying to optimize your overall network condition, and by getting your overall network condition into the mid-80s, statistics have proved that that's the most cost-effective way of maintaining an entire network. People realize you cannot get 100 on every street. That's just, it doesn't make sense to have a street like that. So optimally, you want to get your network in the mid-80s. And that's really what the program's trying to do here, push you into the mid-80s.
So is that kind of like over the long term, forever,
Mhm.
because the city is a perpetuity, that you're minimizing cost? Because, I mean, for example, if you let the streets go and then you have to rebuild them, they cost $1 million a mile instead of 10,000.
Right.
Is that basically it, or is it a bit more complicated than that?
It's a bit more complicated than that. There's quite a few things that go into this. There's the functional classifications of your roads are built into it. The current pavement condition are built into this. The type of roads that you're built, the material that they're built with, the life cycles that they're built with. There's all the different maintenance strategies, the crack seals, the slurry seals, the cape seals, the thin overlays. There's a lot of things that are built into that try to optimize it and get it to right where it should be. So, yeah, it's if you have insomnia, I could give you a manual that would cure that in a heartbeat and tell you all about how it gets there, because it is as boring can get. And I'm not a statistician, but they a lot of them help make this system go. So, the fifth column down, or the next to last column down, it's called backlog after 5 years. That is the most important number we want to look at up here. And that shows you your deferred maintenance. And when I talk about deferred maintenance, that is a treatment that you should be applying now, and you're not, because you do not have the money to do it. You simply have not budgeted for it, so it's getting deferred. And I think if any of us go home tonight, we could probably look around our house or our yard and see a lot of deferred maintenance that we need to do. Same thing happens with streets. You're deferring a lot of maintenance. Right now, you're currently $2.7 million in the hole. So that's what it'd take you right now to get back to that optimum thing we were talking about, that optimum number. If you needs, of course, it says if you spend 712, you're going to have no backlog after 5 years. Currently, it's at 2.7 million. If you were to get to the 350,000 annual budget, you'd of course reduce that to 1.6, and then you can, accordingly on the last column, 1.2. So that's the one you really want to track, because, and I think that James had me run a report, a 10-year scenario.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and you can see that deferred maintenance, it really grows, it takes off. And the thing about Washougal is you have a lot of new streets that were built in the last 10 to 15 years that don't require a lot of maintenance right now. But if you run a 10-year scenario, and remember that graph I showed, pavement life is about 25 years, they're all coming due in that next 10-year scenario. So your deferred maintenance is going to go up quite a bit if you continue at that $150,000 level. So that just kind of gives you a snapshot of your deferred maintenance right now. That's the key number you want to look at on this chart. It sits at 2.7 million based on today's dollars. And you can also see the percentage of good roads after 5 years. You're going to drop quite a bit. You look up there, we're at 85% now, and you'll be at 75% based on today's dollars if you continue spending that $150 a year. Scenario 2, this is your current investment. This is what you're spending right now annually, is $150,000 a year on your streets. You're at 80 right now. You can see that, and you can see that glide pattern. You go down 4 points in the next 5 years. A 4-point drop on a network PCI is significant, because even if you make a big infusion of money into, and some cities have, I just worked with the city of Oregon City across the way here a few years ago, and they enacted a street utility fee, which I understand you can't do in this state, but you can do in Oregon. And it's been a real blessing to many of the cities in Oregon, because it's put a lot of money back into the street coffers. City of Wilsonville, for example, I helped them get theirs 12 years ago, and today they've suspended it because they've gotten enough money out. Their network PCI is now well into the 80s, and they're in great shape. So, but the City of Oregon City has enacted this fee about 4 years ago, and they've come up with about $1.5 million extra into their street budget. And so I just got done rating their roads this year. We looked at their PCI, and it hasn't even gone up a point yet, and they've been dumping. In the last 3 years, they've dumped $3.5 million into their street, and they have not raised it 1 point yet. It's going to take a little while for that to affect. They have 130 miles. So for you guys to lose 4 points in 5 years is a significant drop. It will take you a lot of money to gain that 4 points back. So as we sit here in 2017 and you haven't upped that budget at all, it's going to be a significant amount of money to get it back to that 80 that you're at currently. This is the $350,000 a year. This would be adding $200,000 more than you currently have in there. And this is the effect that it would have. You'd be at 80 today and you'd be at 80 in 5 years. So this is basically maintaining. So you need $350,000 annually to maintain your current condition. If you don't, it will drop. And here's some PCI comparisons to some other cities. You can see Camas has got a PCI of 78, so you definitely beat them there. The city of Ridgefield up the way there, their PCI is 73. Oregon City, you can see is at 68, and you can see what their budget is. Pretty significant. Wilsonville, again, they're almost at that optimum. They're at 82. They actually, so they're really close to that optimum number, and they're spending $3 million over 5 years. So, and that's all based on that street utility fee. So they're pretty flush. They're lucky. A little city out in Central Oregon, Prineville, you can see they're 75, and they're spending $2 million over that same time. West Lynn's an interesting city because that's the very first city that I ever implemented pavement management in back in 1990. And they have continually cut their budget and pulled their money out of their street fees. They're barely putting any money into their system. You can see they're putting in $300,000 over 5 years. They're almost twice as big as you. They have 100 miles, so they're not putting any money in. You can see the effect. The PCI is 62 and falling on that city.
It's a pretty upscale city, too.
It really is.
Parts of it.
Really is. What's that?
Parts of it.
Yeah, parts of it, yeah. Once you climb a hill, it is. But it experienced a lot what Camas did, and they had a lot of growth in the mid-90s to the mid-2000s. Built a lot of streets and artificially inflated their PCI, and so it looks really good, but they're falling really fast there. So, and then you can see you guys there on the bottom, sitting there with the PCI at 80, so.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at the dollars per mile there
Yes, it is.
as well. In Washougal, you can see it's fairly low, and Camas as well. We have the same pavement treatments, basically, Camas and Washougal do. So they're very inexpensive per mile right now because we have good pavement. As that continues to deteriorate, then you get these huge numbers like Wilsonville and Oregon City because, per mile they're doing, inlays, overlays, and, reconstructs versus, just the basic maintenance that we're doing right now. So I just thought I'd point that out.
This is your current PCI condition, your map there, and you can see, I can't really see those colors up there, the legend up there on the left. I believe the yellows are the poor roads, correct?
Orange.
Good.
Orange is poor.
Orange is poor, and the yellows.
Good.
Good load related. Blue is good, non-load, and green is very good.
What does load related mean?
Load related means that the distresses and the problems on that road are caused by the loading on it, not
Okay.
by the age.
Okay.
Typically, it's an under-designed road. It was built, it was there, and then all of a sudden it becomes used for, now all of a sudden trucks are using it or something like that. So there's a lot of load related. It hasn't been structurally designed properly.
There's some streets that aren't colored, they're just gray.
Not
In fact,
city-
one that I have to drive every day to get to work or to here on. And it's got no color on it at all, it's just gray.
Which one's that?
Well,
Might not be
It's probably not a city
City
street.
Street or.
it connects,
Is it private?
no? I wouldn't think so.
Because I did run into
It
some,
connects two city streets.
yeah, that doesn't, it actually, I'm surprised.
to look at it.
Yeah, we can double check that one, but a lot of times we do have private streets. They do connect city streets. It's kind of amazing. Yeah, or it could be a county road, or it could be a state highway.
I don't think,
These ones up here in the northeast, there's a few.
Is that, up there?
Check the classification.
Hmm.
Some of those are the ports, you can see the ports stuff.
Yeah, I can touch base with you.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
it doesn't make
Write it
any
down.
sense for it to be a private street.
Did I include the port roads?
If they are port, probably not, but there are some down
I
there.
wouldn't have included them. If they're
No.
not city-maintained streets, I
Yeah.
probably didn't
Right.
maintain them, or didn't input them in.
Yeah, there's some down there that aren't.
Okay. So that's your current PCI. So if you flip over to the next slide, you'll see that the whole lot more green comes out of there when you start putting more money into your system, and you can see exactly that a lot of those roads jump to green and a lot less are orange as you put more money into your system. And sometimes people want to know, well, if we do increase funding, what are we going to get for our money? Well, this is exactly what you can have the answer. We can run any scenario you want with any amount of money that you throw at it and say, okay, based upon a cost effectiveness rating, the program is suggesting if you do give us more money, this is what you would get, and it would show the streets exactly which ones would be treated. And this is a map that a lot of our clients like to give to the local newspaper, especially when they're going out for bonds or public votes or something like that to increase street funding. They're actually can show maps and say, here it is today, here's what it'll look like if we do get this funding. So that's kind of a quick and dirty on pavement management. Does anybody have any questions of me?
Have we done any maintenance to the newer neighborhoods? Like mine was built in 2005.
We're actually, we just got through with our slurry seal program for this year, and we typically use that type 2 slurry seal on some of the newer pavements, and we just finished that program. So
I don't remember.
it was on the website. Yeah, it was
So you've already done the neighborhoods?
right
But I'm
for this
saying-
year. Yeah,
Oh, for this year, so there's more.
we don't
new
do
ones.
all
Oh.
of them, but we did the ones that we decided should be done this year.
Okay. 'Cause that's right at that window you're talking about.
Yeah, it's 2005
Yes.
is when your streets were built. Yes, you're right there in that smack in that window where a slurry seal should be applied to it.
And so we have limited funding, so some of those streets that are in that window we can get to, some of them we can't.
Right.
So Joel, on the back page, your scenario, that's based on scenario number 3?
The 350,000.
It's good to see, the city availing itself of the opportunities to use technology for management of something like streets. Although I think our street department is doing an excellent job of doing it with slide rule and pencil. But
Spreadsheets.
that can come and go with the departure of a single person in a department like that.
Yes, it can.
This offers us a scientific basis on which to make the decisions. And I love your models.
Thanks. Well, yeah, it's interesting. Some of the cities have actually, after I've done it and implemented a program and the city council had a chance to see it, they've actually passed policy saying, okay, we will do this every 3 years. We will have our streets analyzed. We will run these reports and run these scenarios and pass that as a policy, because you're right. As people come and go in public works departments, sometimes it just gets thrown to the side. I mean, it's,
I've seen it happen.
yeah.
The thing I like about your models is that the assumptions are clear.
Right.
There's no hidden assumptions.
No, we don't want to do that. Yeah, everything's quantitative.
And there are very few of them to be introduced into the calculation, so it's clear as a bell where you're coming from.
Right. Thank you.
Other questions for Joel?
I was just going to offer some comments just in the wake of the presentation. The reason that we retained these services, and thank you very much, was so that we could have data and a model from which to base future recommendations on what we should do for the deferred maintenance that we know that we have. As you know, we have funded street maintenance out of our REIT revenues, the real estate excise tax revenues. We are also using it primarily to pay debt service for Reflection Plaza, and that's basically exclusively where our REIT dollars are going. And in the Great Recession, REIT dollars went down. We were funding this, I think the peak was in the $400,000 or $500,000 range. I don't know that there was a sustained $500,000 street maintenance program over time, but that was the peak that it reached. REIT is obviously, in light of what we experienced, is a volatile source of funding, yet that's what we're using, and that was in place years ago for the debt service on the bond, and then for pavement management. As we begin to move forward, we have to decide what our goal is, Is it to keep the 80 that we have, which right now is very good and compares favorably? It's not optimum based upon this system, but it's very good, and we wouldn't be getting worse, although there is a gap in deferred maintenance even where we're at now. So you saw that on those histograms, you saw that growing over time. Basically what this says is we need to find, to keep our 80, if that's what we want, we need $200,000 more per year, and we have to assume that 150 coming out of REIT would still be available, and that REIT revenues would stay at a level that would support that. Our current projections indicate that that would still be available and that we can still service the debt at Reflection Plaza. We're not projecting another Great Recession, but no one projected that before it happened, and when we set ourselves up to be funding our debt service off of the
Have we seen an upswing in the REIT revenues? I assume we have.
REIT is up.
Yeah.
We're not making any bold, aggressive, bullish side.
Just monitoring the Case-Shiller index to find out how REIT does.
So properties are moving more frequently. REIT, as you know, is a tax on the exchange of property. So as we look at moving forward, $200,000, and the idea would be to find a source of revenue for that is not highly volatile, that could be counted on, that could be dedicated to doing that. We don't have the same tools available to us that some of the other states have, like Oregon, where they basically treat their streets like a utility, and they can basically do a fee or a tax or whatever you would call it, but it's for that purpose. The state of Washington has sort of a surrogate for that in the Transportation Benefit District. That was something that cities worked with the legislature to establish a number of years ago. We've talked about that here. This is not by design, it's just interesting that it came out this way. After you apply the model to our system to maintain our current score, it's $200,000. The legislature has provided the councilmanic authority in a TBD with license tabs of $20 a tab, and that is predicted, now this is about an 18-month-old prediction, $190,000. So basically, the councilmanic authority that you have and the gap in the advised annual funding happen to be basically the same number. Now that's just an example of a source of revenue that can be used that is available to you. Of course, you can use your general funds, and if you're not interested in new revenue to do this, but in adjusting expenditures, then if it goes up 200 here, then we'd have to go down 200 somewhere else. So this is an important consideration for our budget as we move forward. That's why we wanted to have this information at this time, so that we could be looking at that.
Something that you mentioned that I think is very important, and I want to make sure everybody got it, didn't miss it, because I missed it the first time around, but you said it twice. And that was, if you're making the argument for an increase in street maintenance, dollars into street maintenance, this system makes the argument for you. And looking at your charts, it certainly does.
Yeah. Yes, it will. It will produce exactly down to the project level which streets should be and what they will get and what year over a 5 or a 10-year scenario.
And that's just to maintain them as they are today, not to upgrade them.
Yeah, that's depending on any number you put in. You can put in today's budget or any number you want, and it'll tell you exactly, based on cost effectiveness number, it'll rank your streets and what you should do and the optimum year to do it.
It's interesting when you do the before and after on the two charts. In the maintain, it's a system-wide index. So some streets improve as you invest more, and then there's a couple where they decline because they are already to the state of decline where that's not where you want to leverage the funds. But overall, your system is maintained. There's a whole myriad of details, and we can email you a link so that you can have the full report. There's all kinds of detail inside that report that informs these high-level parameters. But really the bottom line question for the community is, we're in good shape. That's primarily because we're a relatively new community for many of our miles, our pavement miles. It's a testament to the quality staff that we have and the great work that they've been doing with the limited resources that they've been given. And we have a plan forward, and we know how much it'll cost. Then it just goes into the mix of everything else that we're working with and prioritizing and how we want to fund and what services and where they should line up. So it's timely for that as we move into the budget.
Well, as a concept, the Transportation Benefit District is something that actually sounds kind of reasonable to me, because it's like a user fee. You know, we're charging, you know, something that has some relationship to street usage, which is a $20 charge on your vehicle registration. That sounds, you know, not that I'm crazy about raising taxes and fees, but that sounds like one that you could really make a pretty good case for.
That's the notion.
Goes directly back to it.
As I understand it, your system gives us a recommendation on which project to do first.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, and using you can test that assumption based on what ifs.
Right.
What if scenarios that you can use in this software.
That's true. And you can also do a projected PCI, so you can look out 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years and see what, if you do this treatment today, what's that street going to be in 5 or 10 years. And you can put in a different treatment and run it and say, well, it looks like we're going to get more bang for our buck by maybe just crack sealing it and slurry sealing it every 7 years instead of putting a thin overlay or something like that on it. Yeah, so all sorts of what if scenarios.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, that was the other thing I wanted to mention. I think it's our recommendation as we work forward going into the future years that we be a subscriber to this approach, just as a matter of routine, that this is not a one-time scenario that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we need to be checking in so that we know what we're doing. We've got data to drive it.
Off the top of your head, do you have the percentage of how many streets are new, say within that 10-year window versus?
I don't, but if I was sitting down at the at my computer, I could tell you in about 60 seconds.
That would be in that report, but
yeah, it's one of the
whether
things.
I would know how to read it.
Yeah, the year constructed is in on every one of these streets
Oh,
here,
okay.
so it's very easy to query it and find out how many are 5, 10, 20 years old. Be glad to send you that information if you'd like.
I have it too in the report, so it's just a matter of crunching the numbers in the spreadsheet.
And what's the cost of the service for Mr. Condor?
I
$13,500.
think it was, yeah, the total contract cost was $13,500.
$1,500 in the software. You have to download it.
Yeah, you own the software.
So we own it now, and you're saying we should do it every 3 years?
Well, most
That's
agencies will do it every 2 years, some do it every 3 years. Anytime you're doing PCI projections and looking at long-term analysis, the more points you have statistically, of course, the more accurate the projections will be out. So right now you have 1 point for each road, you have 1 PCI. As you get a subsequent inspection, then the curves will bend and be more accurate. So so typically what happens with a new implementation like this, you want to at least get 2 points in. So the industry standard is to do an inspection every 2 years for the first 2 year cycles, and then after that it's 3 years. Some folks, we have some clients we do every year, and some we do every 4 to 5 years. So.
Yeah, and when you think about the asset that we're talking about, it's a huge benefit to make sure that we're maintaining it properly, and this really does that for us. Camus actually called us and said, "Hey, we know this guy. You might want to think about this because it's difficult to get our crews out there and to grade every street. It costs a lot of money to do that just in our staff time. So it was very reasonable, and we got a lot of bang for our buck with Joel. So
It'll be significantly cheaper next time around too, because I had to go run every street and measure it and inventory it, and that took me longer than it did to do the ratings of the streets. So, the cost next time around will probably be about 60 to 70% of what it was this time. You're probably talking maybe $8,000.
Well, that's
write
good
that
news.
down.
Yeah, you can hold me to that.
Did you hear that quote?
Well, yeah. Well, I just bid a huge job where I've got 2,100 miles to do, and get over to Central Oregon and the gas is $4.40 a gallon or something. It's like, yeah. So don't hold me to anything.
But we own the software and you've measured
Yes, you do.
everything, so.
Yes, you do. Yeah, and it's available online.
Yeah.
So anybody can access it if you're sitting at home really bored one night and want to get
Oh,
in there.
yeah.
Like I said, it's a great cure for insomnia.
Can I ask one, this might be for you or James or you, Dave. Do we have like a, if there's some situation with the street that is really, and it's not, this is kind of outside of pavement, well, it might deal with pavement management, I guess it does, where it's really a bad situation, do we have like a pothole budget or something like that that we could just fix it some kind of way?
We
It's
just,
really
you know, out
egregious.
of our M&O budget, we do fix potholes, things like that. If we have a real bad street, we'll think about getting it, you know, overlaid or fixed some way. A lot of times we'll do what they call a grind inlay, where you can just grind out the bad spot and then inlay it with pavement. And that's a fix. And then you can slurry over the top of it, and the base is taken care of, and then you've got like a new street. But those seams, every time you cut a street, the seam allows water in there, and it deteriorates the road, so
It's not ideal.
it's not ideal.
We use our crews, you know, for those types of repairs. So it's.
A lot of times, yeah.
The labor is captured in the budget if we're using our crews to do that, whereas this 150 is programmed out through contractors to come in and pay for the time and materials to do all that work. We stockpile some materials for routine repairs to all of our systems, including our streets.
Don't our guys do most of the crack seal?
We do. We have a crack seal machine, and, you know, we found that that's one of the most cost-effective treatments, because you actually you seal the crack before water gets in there. And so that's been a big maintenance item for us, is the crack seal, yeah, for sure. And I don't know if you've seen that process, but they actually blow the crack out with compressed air, and then they
Glue it.
some rubberized seal in there.
Other questions, other comments? This one will be back to you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
You're more than
How soon do
welcome.
you expect it to come back?
Probably within a month or so.
It's interesting information.
Okay, moving along to amendments to the Transportation Improvement Plan.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is some good news we got from Washington DOT here recently, and it has to do with our Safe Routes to School program. We had a project, it was called the Jump to Guard Safe Routes to School project, and it wasn't in our 6-year tip, and so we need to modify the 6-year tip to get the project in there so that so that we can receive federal funds. And so that's why we're bringing this forward tonight. Usually we update the tip we update it every 5 years. It's called a 6-year tip, but we update it on the 5th year, so it goes into place on the 6th year. But so we're asking to kind of get this on the fast track and to actually set the public hearing tonight, and then we'll actually hold the public hearing hopefully on August 12th if the council desires. There is a map, I believe, that you might be able to bring up. Just get it to mine here. Okay. It kind of shows the project. It's an aerial shot of the project, and yeah, it's in your packet as well. I see Councilmember Lindsay's looking at that right now. But it's actually an off-road trail. It goes from Sunset Ridge Drive and connects that Sunset Ridge neighborhood to Jump to Guard Middle School. I don't know if you've been on Sunset Road and seen the kids, you know, walking out in the lanes, you know, getting to school in the morning. But we feel that this would be an improvement to the current conditions on the way that they get to school. So there it is there. There's actually, you see the wide spot there, there's actually a bridge that needs to be installed over Campen Creek as well. So that's the project in a nutshell. We're actually going to have a crossing as well, a lit crossing across Sunset Ridge Drive. There'll be a little bit of lighting on the trail, some landscaping. The school district has written us letters of support for the project. It was actually brought forward by, we were thinking about safe routes to school projects, and this was one of them that was suggested by Washington State Department of Transportation, who administers the program. So we definitely jumped on the chance, and looks like they are possibly going to fund it. I don't have the award letter yet, but this is the first process.
What would you describe the prognosis of receiving the grant is? Because we thought we were good, then
Yeah.
we weren't, we were off the list, and then all of a sudden we get this communication that says you're good to go.
It looks very good. We communicated with the DOT last week and talked to them a little bit. They wanted us to change the schedule on the application because this is a few years old, this grant application. And so we changed the schedule, got it back to them, and it looks very promising. I think we're gonna be fine, but until I have that letter, you know.
And you can't get the letter until we're actually on your TIP.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, Joe?
I noticed the proposed crosswalk. I know that area because I live right over there. That is so close to that curve, and people fly through there.
Mm-hmm.
How far is it to the north, east, to the next curve?
I couldn't tell you how many feet there are, but we looked at it. We had an engineer come in and look at it from Wallace Engineering, and there's room there. We can actually move the crosswalk mid-block there
That's
because
what
we
I
are
was
going to
thinking.
install some lighting. So this is kind of it's a conceptual drawing right here. I mean, the path could take a different route.
Yeah.
The crosswalk could be a little bit different. Generally, you like a crosswalk right there at the
Yeah, it's right at the
intersection.
curb, sure. But it's so close to that corner, and I can't picture how far away that other corner is that
It's far enough. There's enough of a straightaway there to where.
seems like getting it farther up the road would give these guys going north on Sunset View more time.
And we'll get the engineers to look at that and just to make sure it is a safe routes to school program, so they are very concerned about safety. And that's one of the things that the Department of Transportation does is they have a whole team of engineers that, you know, kind of value engineer the project before it even gets
And they think like a middle schooler.
developed. Yeah, exactly.
Because as soon as they come out
Maybe
on
not.
that, to that, into that yellow road, they're gonna fly across the street anyways. They're, you know, most middle schoolers aren't gonna walk down that little red proposed sidewalk to
Well,
get in there.
And we're improving a situation, you know, right now because there are kids that walk out on that street, and it's, you know, we've had a
Yeah.
number of complaints.
Because there are no sidewalks.
There are no sidewalks,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, there's really not, once they get to the sidewalk itself, the proposed sidewalk, there's nowhere else for them to go other than the street. I mean, you've got
Yeah, it stops.
the county
Well, it's certainly good
yard
to
out
know.
there, everything else, it's all fenced in, everything along the way, so.
Right.
And
Well-
this will be a signaled crosswalk.
It'd be very similar to the one we're
Main
gonna
Street.
do out here, yeah.
Paul?
That was my first question, is whether we're gonna have signals for the crosswalk.
It'll be a lesser version than the one that's out there at Hathaway now. We're actually gonna do another crossing here on East Street this year with CDBG. And it's an LED light, so it's very, very bright, and it does all four quadrants, so it shines all ways. And it's also got solar, so it runs on a battery. You don't have to change the battery out very often. It's pretty much a new technology, but it works great because you don't have to run power to it.
And Jennifer, you probably remember maybe better than I do, but it seems to me that the first time I remember people coming to us in a council meeting and say, we have got to do something about this, goes back at least 5 years, and it may be 6. So it's good to see it moving forward.
Dave?
No, you. Thanks. Jim, it's a little hard to tell from the picture, but from the satellite photograph there, is any portion of this in a wooded area?
There are some trees. It's, you know, they're spotty through there. The school already has a path through a lot of that area, but from the bridge to Sunset, there's some trees in there. There's a few trees in there.
That's one of the reasons that we're going to 10-foot wide pathways and
Right.
sidewalks in there.
We'll actually have some, it'll actually be lit as well.
Yeah.
It's not for, you know, it's not really meant to be used at night, but, you know, those hours, you know, after school's out in the, you know, middle of winter time, it gets dark early, and so there'll be some lights out there as well.
And that, security's my concern.
You know, we touched base with Department of Transportation about security when we originally, I was remembering conversations, like you say, it's been a while, but I believe, and I'll have to double check with DOT, but I believe there's some other off-road paths as well. And I think their determination was if they looked at, you know, crime statistics in a certain area that, you know, that might limit it or something like that. But we've actually discussed with police departments going to be very involved with this as far as education, and it's part of the criteria. And like the mayor said, 10-foot wide, you know, normal sidewalks usually, you know, 6-foot wide or 5 or 6 foot wide. So it's going to be a lot wider. There are going to be some landscaped areas as well. And like I say, there's going to be some of that lighting. And I would assume that the school district may, you know, have some ideas as well as far as security.
The police are on board with it, I'm on board with it.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I did have a question about the ownership of the property that we're going to be cutting through. Is it county, is it city?
Actually, it's the school district's property. It goes all the way to Sunset. So it you know, it was a perfect marriage between what they already have there. They have a science trail that they walk on, and so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Since there's a, what did you call it, the lighted crosswalk? Is there any way that when that goes off, you can have a light on the south end of the curve and something on the north curve on the other side? Can they be
If it's
connected?
necessary, if the engineers think that it's necessary, we can go ahead and do that.
Because that's a blind curve,
Right.
and you go around that corner and all of a sudden there's a crosswalk blinking at you.
So we'll look, they usually look at the speed on the road, they'll look at the curve, they'll look at the distance, and they will check that to see.
They do that little
Maybe a pre-warning
trip.
sign or something like that, but.
Count the speed. Will they do
Right.
the speed check
So
on how
the-
fast cars travel at?
So the lit crossing, you know, it has a pre-warning. It has a pre-warning sign, and I don't know if that's gonna be lit or not, but it has a pre-warning sign and then the lit crossing. So there is some warning there.
It'd be nice if it was attached and could flash.
It's also going to be a big education piece because kids still have to trip it to do it.
Right.
They just walk across, it's not going to do anything.
Right.
They've still got to hit the buttons as they're using it and know that that's there to ensure them being a little bit safer, even if they see no cars at the time.
Yep.
And it does connect a large area that, you know, of homes that utilize the school, so it's,
A lot of homes there.
right. It's important.
Okay, so you've got this on consent agenda tonight just to set the hearing for our next meeting.
Right.
In order to have the public hearing to update the plan.
Right.
So that's in your consent agenda for this evening. This is one of those quicker than we normally would like to bring them forward, so. Other questions for Jim on this item? Okay, moving to park board composition.
Thank you, Your Honor, and I think Suzanne's back.
Suzanne,
there.
come on up.
Have any questions? Come on up, Suzanne. Should have Rob. Yeah, Rob did a great job with pavement management. I'd like to give him a lot of credit for that. That was one of the benefits of bringing on a city engineer. Anyways, so this is was brought forward by the council And basically, it's a language change for the park commissioners, and it's WashU Municipal Code 2.20.20. And we want to amend this to change the number of board members from the current 5 to 7 members. And the ordinance has further been changed to specify that 6 of the residents must reside in Washougal, while 1 is a non-resident and would be in the within the urban growth boundary. So we'd like to bring this forward, and then again tonight as well in the council meeting for new business. So this is an ordinance change, and our recommendation later would be to pass, post, and publish in the usual manner. Do you have any questions on the changes to Washougal Municipal Code?
Okay, Joe?
Just curious why there would be a non-resident.
Represents.
Does that have?
Mainly to represent future residents. Make sure that we've got plans for parks in those areas if they're deemed necessary. Again, it's in the urban, but they've still got to be in the urban growth boundary.
Right.
Wherever that other one is, so they're in future annexed areas of the city.
And that's an existing provision in
Is
the,
it?
with the current
Right.
5.
Oh, I didn't
One
catch
is
that.
allowed to be from our UGB. So
But does not have to be?
it
No.
does not have to be.
No.
It is allowed to be. And what the council requested last week was to move the 5 to 7. So
Okay.
we're just mentioning that in so doing, that 1 that could be from the UGB still exists. That we didn't hear that should be changed, so we just
I didn't
keeping
hear
that.
it mentioned last week, so I didn't catch it.
Is one of the current 5 in the UGB?
Everybody's from the city, aren't they?
They're all in the city limits.
They're all on, okay.
And the planning commission also allows this, but I think everyone from the planning commission is inside the city limits.
Do you have a question?
No, I was actually, Brent stole.
This is what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and this is what we want to do,
That's good.
so
Yep.
looks fine to me.
I like it.
It's on for new business.
Comment on that?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm back in my Dr. No rule. I actually am not in favor of this. I think there are other opportunities for people to get involved with the city. I don't want to see the park board expanded. One of the things I learned very early on in my doctoral program, my doctoral studies, was that the work that comes out of a committee is inversely proportional to the size of the committee. The more people you get on a committee, the more talk takes place and less action takes place. So for that reason, I'm not in favor of this. And I'm sorry that I didn't bring this up earlier when this came up, but it's taken me a while to think this through. My apologies.
Councilman, let me give you my favorite quote on that. The ideal committee has 3 members, with 2 of the members absent. That's Mark Twain. But
Thank you
actually,
for
in this
making my
case,
point.
though, I think we need I think getting a wide, it's not so much work the committee's doing, it's getting a wide representation and input throughout the city. So I have no problem with going to 7 members.
I like it because it's a great entry-level experience for people to volunteer in the city. It's not frightening to them. It's a just nice grassroots group. And the more the better when it comes to bringing people in to volunteer.
We've got other opportunities to do that too. How many vacancies have we got on the cemetery board right now?
I don't think we have any right now. I think this is the only one that we've got.
We've had vacancies there before then.
Oh, yeah, we go around and around.
I could see that I'm gonna be a minority of one on this one.
Okay.
And I understand everybody's position on it.
It's a democratic process.
Now, had I been a doctor, maybe I'd know that.
Any other questions for Jim or Suzanne on this item?
Nope.
Okay.
Can I just take 1 second to say how much I love our parks? And a lot of it is because of the work that you do, Suzanne. Our parks are a wonderful asset to our city, and I agree with Connie. It's a very good place to bring people in to begin to know our city. So I applaud you.
Second.
Thank you both. Okay, with that, we are at the second opportunity. If there's anyone from the public that would like to comment to council. Marilyn.
Oh, I'm just gonna sit back here.
Okay. You may. I'm Marilyn Tyrrell, and I live at 950 G Street. I'm very much in favor of G Street. However, I do love Washougal too. Well, I get bored with representing G Street all the time, but you know, it's my lot in life. The pictures that were up there when the gentleman was here, I'm sorry, Colbert. Anyway, all the area from East Street up to the river is yellow in my area. I've been there 10 years. It would be nice if it were orange or something besides yellow. I would like you to remember us. I want to thank Mr. Dunn because when G Street was made sort of one way because of the close off at East Street, 9th Street got a lot of action, and I asked for a street light, and you put it in, and I've never had an opportunity to thank you. On this 6-year TIP neighborhood projects, first of all, I'm concerned that there's traffic calming all over the place. I don't know how the fire engines are going to get through if you have bumpers all over. I really think that there are other methods of traffic calming besides bumps, and I hope that that's considered. And the other part is, it says neighborhood. Does that mean we have to have a neighborhood association to pay our share? No. What does neighborhood mean then?
I think that's in anticipation of LIDs, local LIDs, and other.
That's just a classification.
Right, that's correct. It's just neighborhoods. That's what it means.
Okay.
Streets.
Thank you.
Marilyn, you would be interested to know, one, you don't want G Street being orange, because orange is really bad.
Yeah, orange is
Oh,
bad.
orange is
really bad.
Well, any better color than yellow then?
Well, when I saw Joel's report, though, on the year constructed on G Street,
Yeah.
it just said at creation. So it's old.
That was a lot of years ago.
It's old.
Genesis.
Well, it would be nice if you could do something besides shed gravel around it.
We have that one on the list, most definitely. Anyone else that would like to comment to council? Okay. Seeing none, I have no items for. Oh, Larry, I'm sorry, you got to get going there.
Ask a question. Larry Wagner, 627 20th. You know, I was looking at this map that shows the trail for the kids, and then you got to build a sidewalk down like a, I don't know, quarter mile or whatever it is, and then cross the street. Why couldn't you put the cross right there where it hits the street and go up that buffer zone up to that first cross street at the edge of the development? Do you see what I'm talking about?
Saying put the crosswalk on the sidewalk.
Shorter answer is we can.
Wouldn't that be safer than having the kids walk down the sidewalk to the crosswalk if you could just eliminate and go across the street?
I'm not sure at this point, just because the road, what's the distance between the curve that Connie Jo was talking about? And generally, we like to have the crossing where the intersection is.
Oh.
So this will be an engineering decision, and there's a lot smarter people than me. There's one of them sitting over there, Rob Charles, but that will make that determination on the best spot for it.
Okay, I was just kind of thinking that would kind of problem solve.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And that may happen.
I mean, I think it's a buffer zone, isn't it? Of that line.
I don't know what you mean by buffer zone.
I mean, where the revision stops.
Not sure.
We'll let you guys talk about that one afterwards. Anyone else from the public that would like to comment to council? Okay, mayor's report, I have no items for you. Council, any items at this point, or do you want to hold till we come back? Yes, Dave.
I just want to note that this, Marilyn, we're in agreement.
I'm sorry?
We're in agreement on traffic calming.
Thank you.
I just thought you'd like to know that.
Gee, that makes two things.
Anything else from council at this point? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned until 7 p.m. right here.